Good afternoon, almost afternoon. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining us for Lean Bites today. I'm Jason Buck, a business development director here at Lean Techniques. I hope everyone will be enjoying the next 16 minutes from an outdoor location or on a golf course. This backdrop is just wishful thinking for me. If this is your first time here, welcome. Lean Bites are a short 16-minute talk. Get it? 16 bites. This is where our experts are going to provide you with some simple, practical tips and techniques that you can start applying within your organization today. So a couple of housekeeping items. If you have any questions throughout the talk, please just feel free to drop them in the chat and we'll try to address them at the end if time allows, or we can offer more insight in an email follow-up as well. And number two, please do us a huge favor at the end of the Zoom. Once you close out, there will be a survey that pops up. So if you could just put your feedback in there, that would be awesome. Let us know how we're doing and what we could do for future Lean Bites. So with that, we'll get started. I'm very excited to introduce my friend and UX/CX genius, Barry Closser, who's going to be talking about the ROI of no, making the case not to build. Barry, take it away.
Awesome. Thanks very much, Buck. I am Barry Closser. I've got about a little over 10 years experience in user experience. So have seen a lot of opportunities to make sure that we're building the right thing. And that also sometimes comes with a lot of requests to product design, engineering, whoever it may be. That is talking to stakeholders or leadership. So I wanted to throw this together to kind of talk through how you can navigate some of those conversations, because sometimes the best thing for your product is to say that's not the right feature for us. So that's what we're going to talk a little bit about today. Well, if my transitions will work, there we go. So I'm sure most of us have heard we need to build this thing in order to compete with our competitor. Maybe that's a small thing. Maybe it's a huge whole new product line, something like that. Or we've heard, I saw that another product, maybe related or unrelated to what you're working on, has this thing, feature, ability, whatever it might be, and we have to do that, and we have to do it immediately. So drop everything and focus on that. So these are the kinds of requests that we're going to talk about today, both the urgent and wishful thinking ones. So the first thing to think about is that make sure that you're communicating your no as progress, not necessarily pushback. So the first way you're going to be able to do that is by making sure that you understand the why behind the ask for the feature or product. So most people tend to see the solutions first rather than identifying problems. So they'll immediately present you with a solution instead of what it is that they're trying to solve for. So what can you do there? Just ask some questions, have honest conversations with an open mind, because there may be a valid request, even if you're not understanding the request yet. So maybe diving in with, what problem are you trying to solve, or what goals are we trying to have an impact towards, both either at a team level or at an overall organizational level. And then you'll move into making the recommendation. And that recommendation should be probably not a flat out no. That doesn't usually go over too well. So think of it more as a not yet. And make sure that you're bringing your stakeholders along on that not yet journey. That could look like learnings that you've had through your discovery process, sharing prototypes with them, and direct quotes from user feedback sessions that you may have done. For some folks, you may also be able to pair that user-backed evidence that you gathered with the overall financial impact. So we'll talk a little bit about that later and what that would look like. But some folks worry more about the bottom line than anything else, which is perfectly valid. So you kind of have to meet your stakeholders where they are. And then make sure that you're tying the decision back to business goals and whatever those may be. So those could be revenue, that you're trying to save money, increase efficiency, or just the overall customer experience for your product. So I talked a little bit about using that evidence, and let's talk a little bit about some quick and easy ways, and cheap, to build evidence. So before we invest a lot of time and money, There are some ways that we can quickly check that the idea is solving a real customer problem and not just the whim of a overexcited stakeholder or somebody who just has a great idea. You want to make sure that you're actually solving a problem. You want to make sure that the idea is tying back to our shared goals or objectives. And then is there a real general interest or just a loud opinion? Both of those can be handled differently, but knowing what it is that you're working with makes it a lot easier to build your evidence. So a few simple ways that you can get feedback early on some proposed solutions or ideas is doing some quick customer interviews. These can be formalized or they can be very informal. I've worked with some product folks who have no problem just doing a quick ad hoc call with some of their users to talk to them about what their needs are or what problems they might be having. So they can be quick, spur of the moment, or organized and a little bit more formal, but they don't need to take a lot of time. You could also launch something a little bit more asynchronous through a short survey, making sure that you're avoiding leading questions and avoiding kind of just asking, do you like this? Because those aren't necessarily going to be great survey questions. But putting a little thought into it, you can do a quick short survey to gauge interest in that idea or solution. You can also advocate and share some light prototypes, so whiteboard sketches, sketches on paper, whatever that might be, to keep it lightweight so that you get the idea across, even if it's not the final look and feel. Or you can even do a landing page test. If this is something that's going to be completely new, you'll notice sometimes you'll see something on Hacker News or something like that where they will launch a new product and all they have is a quick description of their product and a place to sign up with an email to hear more when they launch. That's just a quick landing page test to gauge interest on how many people are wanting that product or feature. And you can do that within an existing product as well. So overall, small steps like these can definitely help avoid distractions and make sure to keep the teams overall focused on work that's actually moving the needle, depending on what your organization is looking for. So once you've built your evidence, something to keep in mind is to not forget the V in MVP. So I'm sure most people on the call have heard of MVP, but it's minimum viable product. And minimum, the definition I found was the least or smallest amount possible, attainable, or required, whereas viable is something that is capable of working successfully. And these are in a little bit of pull back and forth with each other. And sometimes we can find ourselves leaning too much into minimum and not enough into viable. So if you only focus on minimal solutions without ensuring that they are viable, you're going to end up destined for some poor adoption because it's not going to meet the needs of your users. As I'm sure many of us have heard, we talk a lot in the product spaces about skateboards and how you start with a skateboard and move up from there, and that versus maybe a car. And there are plenty of times when that is a great analogy. But if you don't necessarily understand your user needs, not necessarily wants, but actual needs, what if your need is to go from JFK to LAX? If you walked up to Southwest and they said, here, have a skateboard, you can go from JFK to LAX. I'm going to go out on a limb and say you're not going to be very happy with that overall experience. But you also don't have to necessarily get a Ferrari. You can get the old beat up little car that gets you from A to B. It helps you make sure that it's a viable solution for you, even if it may be the minimum one that you can find. So always remember to make sure that it's also viable and minimal. So when you're thinking about the overall cost of building an idea, as you've built some evidence and now you want to talk about or think about the financial impacts of a new feature or product, some things to keep in mind. Not only the initial development costs, but also the longer term maintenance costs. And those can be in longer term, upgrades to software packages and libraries or physical updates and maintenance for some things as well, if you've got something that's self-hosted, keeping those types of things in mind. Also, think about that investment to reach viability. So even if you don't you shouldn't necessarily do all of your engineering in one big swoop. Think about in the investment you're going to need to reach true viability to see the return on an investment or the impacts that you expect to see. So what are the features that you must have in order to see the adoption that you're expecting? And then consider your customer experience and brand risk. I'm sure many of us have downloaded an app and it just didn't work. We probably didn't keep the app on our phone to see if they improved it next week, next month, 6 months down the line. We probably just deleted the app and did not think much more about it and went on to a different app that had the features that we needed that was viable for us. So keep that in mind. If you're launching something new, make sure that you aren't going to harm your overall customer experience or brand by launching something that's too incomplete to where it doesn't provide value. So like I said, is your user base going to be patient or will they abandon you? And then think about the opportunity cost from higher impact ideas. So just because a highly influential stakeholder has the idea doesn't necessarily mean that you should do it now. Maybe there are higher impact things on your roadmap that you want to focus on. So making sure that you communicate that if we do X now, that means Y and Z will be pushed to next quarter or next month or whatever that timeline might look like for your backlog. And then remembering that technical debt and that increased system complexity as you add more features. So taking that into account as well. So now that you've thought about all of these different ways, the ROI calculation in and of itself is pretty simple. You have your financial value minus the cost to reach that financial value divided by the project cost, and then you multiply that times 100 to get a percentage. So a couple ways to think about this is if you want to increase revenue. So we can make an additional $150,000 through checkout reminder emails potentially in our system. To implement that feature, it'll cost about $100,000 in total. So if we do the math there, we get about a 50% ROI. That's overall a pretty good return on your investment. Maybe you're looking at saving money, so reducing costs overall. So we can save $70,000 by reducing customer support costs for address changes on emails or on orders through our website. So to make that process self-serve, it would cost about $50,000. So quick look at the math, you get about a 40% ROI. Both of these are great examples, but not always the way the world's going to go. Sometimes you're going to look at it and find that you're going to waste some money. So we can add an additional $100,000 by recreating a market offering. So we think that we'll get $100,000 worth of subscriptions if we recreate something that a competitor or somebody that's going out of the market has. But when we looked at the complexity and what the viability level was at a minimum level, it's going to cost us about $250,000 to build that minimum viable to lure customers away from a current offering. So overall, you do the math on that, you're going to end up upside down by about 60% in your ROI. So pairing these numbers with your evidence can be a great way to tell the story backed with actual financial data, even if they're estimates. So we can move from the first quotes that we have through some of these methods to something around the lines of, you saved us big bucks, whatever amount that may be, by not doing that thing. Or maybe we delivered more value because you helped us prioritize a different thing that impacted our customers overall in a higher value way. So this was just a quick run through of some ideas of how to say no. If you have any direct questions, obviously feel free to be throwing them in the chat, but I've got my email here on the slide as well, or you can reach out to Lean Techniques from our website. With that, that's all I've got. I'm going to hand it back to Jason.
Awesome. Thanks, Barry. Good stuff as always. I didn't see any questions come through in the chat, but feel free to come off mute. We'll stick around for a few more minutes here if you've got some time. Zagers has given us fireworks. Thank you for that, Dan. Appreciate it. Anything else? I'll tease up next month. It's going to be on June 3rd, and we're going to be having our professional software consultant, Brian Gerhardt, affectionately known as Papa Bear here at LT. He's going to be talking about early cloud habits and creating chaos at scale. So nice, interesting tagline there. So make sure you join us on June 3rd. Will be our next one. I didn't see anything else come in. So we'll go ahead and close this out. We'll get these slides over to you as well. If you have any questions, like Barry said, feel free to reach out directly or just to LT via our website. And again, once you close the Zoom window, a little survey will pop up. If you could fill that out for us, we would really, really appreciate it. So thank you so much for attending, and we'd love to hear what you thought about today's session. Thanks so much. Hope you enjoyed the weather. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.